has done so many things, but we're going to let him tell us his story, and we'll bring him in. And just stay with us because something tells me they're going to play these games with us, and we're going to get through this. Let's see. Dr. Valentine, is that you I have on the line?
Yes, indeed.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. You see the games they play when we're doing what we're supposed to do. That's all they got. That's the good news. That's how I look at it. But thank you so much for joining the New Origins. This is your first visit to this platform, but you and I have spoke on many occasions. I'm proud to say that you are my teacher, mentor, my brother, and my friend. So it's so good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm going to get right to it. I said a few things about you. I want to come from this particular space. We're writing our own script. I know that you told me, we spoke earlier today, and one of the things that you've always told us consistently, don't look at this from the topical angle that the narrative gives you, or of us in our community that mean well, thinking that it's just a pump your fists, red, black, and green thing. All that stuff is relative, but you've always told us and taught us to look at it in context from a metaphysical angle, because that is the true nature of things. And so I asked you a question 20 years ago. Where did you see all things going? 20 years ago, it went by just like that. And you mentioned that we were in a quickening, and it's interesting how fast that time went by. And one thing that was haunting to me, and I would wish that at some point I get a chance to tell you 20 years later, Doctor, you were wrong, but you weren't. You said, we're headed for this dystopian Terminator, Judge Dredd thing if we're not careful. And you didn't dance around it. It wasn't feel-goodery, and you gave us, I don't know if hope's the right word, but you gave us truth and science and the information. But you did say that. So I'd like you to kind of fill in the blanks for us. How did we get here, and what, obviously we're going to talk about it in detail, but as you see it, where exactly are we as you see it right now?
Well, it's a multi-layered question with implied answers and objective answers versus subjective ones. It's very difficult to pinpoint it, so we'll have to kind of dance around it until we kind of bring a symmetry to the situation. I can tell you this. I was living by what Jimi Hendrix had said in one of his songs and in his interviews. And I kind of created a saying out of it. I don't live today. I'm only visiting here from another tomorrow. And what that's being said is that there are a lot of people that are born, say, in the baby boomers and not the millennials yet. They're yet to come into their maturity. But there are many around the world right now in that quickening that were born to actually bring symmetry to this time. There's a lot has been lost. The education system destroyed the ability for a kind of intellectual continuity that was rising in its IQ, but in this stead began to fall off. And so our generations began to lose the connection to how this thing began, so that those who began it could then control those who were pretty much empty slates because of the lack of type of education and the kind of cultural continuity that was necessary. And they say, of course, if you don't study your mistakes of yesterday, you're doomed to repeat them tomorrow. But we never taught our children the mistakes that we had made. So a lot of the people that are born today who are rising up and waking up and so forth, they come from another tomorrow. Not the tomorrow that is leading us down that dystopian path, but a tomorrow that veered off of that. A tomorrow where we learned divined what it is that was about to happen, and somehow, we began to drop pearls or breadcrumbs for people to follow metaphysically.
Mm.
They're doing that scientifically today with something called Project Glass. I want to get into that a little bit later on, or maybe at another time. But look into Project Looking Glass, and you'll see why it is that all of this is happening and the reasons what's getting ready to happen, what's getting ready to come out on the other end. What we're headed for, what do we see in the next 20 years? Well, we're at a tipping point at this time. And that tipping point is a very delicate, because we can go either way at this point. Just one little finger on the scale can change things. But I'm
sorry.
Yes.
I was going to say, before we get into it, because I want you to say everything you have with the time that we have, and if we need to come back and you got the time, we'll continue. We've got nothing but time, and this is your time. We make ourselves available. Could you tell us all of your contact information, where we can get to you? We'll make announcements later, but before we get into it, for the benefit of those who don't know who you are, how they can reach you, and what you're doing to teach in depth these sciences and more of this information.
Thank you. Certainly. Well, my name is Dr. Valentine, and I have a university. In fact, our online university was started 15 years ago, and it is actually has the distinction of being the first online university, although following orthodoxy of a Princeton or Harvard or anything like that. But we started an online university using corporate technologies for communicating with different agencies. We took that and we began using it as a medium to contact people around the world to spread the metaphysics, but metaphysics not just as a philosophy of bantering with words, but what we call practical, the application of metaphysics as a way of writing the intellect and writing the emotional body so that it can be ready this time. And so 15 years ago, we put this into action. We were very fortunate to have people of such prestige as Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who he colleague Dr. James Small had opened up a school for boys, a computer school for boys in Ghana, and wanted to know what format we had created there. And so now we see that a lot of universities are actually coming up, and they're pretty much charging the same amount that we've been charging for the last 15 years. So our distinction of dealing with the University of Commission Sciences, a lot of the brothers and sisters who joined us from people who are professors at MIT and Stanford, we've had as our students. We've had airline pilots, superstar jocks, superstar musicians, regular truck drivers, housewives, a spectrum of beautiful people who've come through, and those who are seeking to, enrich their human education, come to our school. And if they wish to have, we're starting our next semester, in fact, this Saturday. And if they're interested in coming in, they can call our telephone number, 800-847-1291. Again, 1-800-847-1291. And that's for also our services. We do consultation in health. We do what we call psychospiritual consultations. We deal with what is known as synergy between couples, married couples. We do that as well. We teach on vaccination exemption and how to know and manage the laws so that you can protect yourself. We also, have our PayPal for those who wish to give us a gift. Our PayPal is kemetearth@gmail.com. Again, Kemet, Kemet, which is the original name of Egypt, Kemet, and Earth, EARTH, @gmail.com. Please, when you do if you do gift us there, make sure you gift it to a friend, because if you don't, then PayPal penalizes both you and me, or both the giver and the receiver. So just click where it says giving to a friend. And then, of course, we have our Cash App at Sanu7. That's $ capital S as in science, lowercase u, n, u, and the number. And, of course, they can always get in contact with us to get onto our mailing list. They can go to our university's website at uksnow.org. Our university's website is U as in United, K as in King, S as in Science, NOW.org. And once the pop-up comes up, put your email in there and you'll be on our mailing list to get updates on our activities. And I guess hopefully that kind of rounds everything off, brother. Thank you.
Well, good. We'll be sure and make announcements later on. I want to ask you a question to kind of frame let me talk about myself and what drew me to you. Before I knew who you were, people told me, they said, well, you know what? You need to look at the work of Reverend Dr. Phil Valentine, because he's talking about things. I mean, I never, in no disrespect, because we have to go through it all. We have to deal with all of it. You started in kindergarten, and depending on where you go with your so-called education, you'll end up a PhD one day. And then our ancestors, they were looking at 720 degrees of knowledge. But what I want to ask is, could you frame for us why metaphysics, what metaphysics is, and how exactly does it work? Or should I just be looking at cops killing somebody, or economy shut down, or a pandemic, or all these things that seem unrelated yet and still they fit just like a puzzle? So could you tell us exactly what is metaphysics, and why should we be looking at things from that context, if you would?
Well, a lot of people equate metaphysics with Greeks and philosophers like Kant and Schopenhauer and those people that we study in school. Metaphysics for us, when we study the ancient Kemetic sciences, which they call the mystery system, the people who are the philosophers, there was no such thing as Greek philosophy. Greek philosophy was actually learned at the feet of the ancient Kemetic masters, who they studied at the feet of. So what I did, if you go up online, you'll see not just metaphysics, but we put the K-E in front of metaphysics and call it Kemetaphysics. We just kind of, reclaimed that particular philosophical science. It is a form of understanding and overstanding motivations of thought and how thought works, thought as an energy, thought as an impulse, thought as a residual interface between the universal mind and what we call the microcosmic mind, which is what you have and what you occupy and what you participate in. And then we examine how the surfaces of our reality, what we would look at and describe, for example. You look over the room and you can actually describe things. You could say that's a refrigerator because you were taught that. That's what the words that would be. Your whole reality is an agreement to say that these things are this way so that we can safely, communicate with one another. But all you've been taught to do is to describe surfaces rather than to define essences. Now, there's a difference there. Describing surfaces versus defining essences. The essence of a thing, or that which is the operating dynamic behind what you can sensually access in the form of sight, sound, smell, and taste. There are operational modalities of frequencies and harmonics and invisible dynamics that don't have words. And so metaphysics attempts to give a kind of language. It's a relanguaging of the reality that you participate in, that have you fixed in and have you habitually defining or describing your reality as real. But what you're doing is participating in a second-hand reality. In fact, your education system is a second-hand participatory system. None of you learn when you're a child. The cow says moo. You see a picture of a cow, Bessie the cow. You say that the dog ran and said bark bark, woof woof. Everything with children sitting today is based upon a presumed reality. You are taught that this is what it was. You have no first-hand reality. You have no first-hand experiences. So do you have a real experience when you have a second-hand experience? No. You can say moo about a cow, but unless you smell and touch, see the cow and know what it is. We're three-dimensional creatures, and we're taught from a two-dimensional medium. What metaphysics does is it begins the third dimension back the reality around you. And what I do is I'm a guide. I facilitate your own ability to add that third dimension to your reality. So metaphysics is a relanguaging of reality and giving you a deeper meaning to the thoughts that you have and how those thoughts were formulated based on just two-dimensional thinking and the two-dimensional reality that you were acclimated to.
Interesting. Now, the reason I wanted you to kind of lay a foundation for us is because those of us who have studied these things from that context, and it's not an age thing. The interesting thing is that you've spoken many times on the young people and what they had. You called our young people in one discussion you had. You called them the real X-Men and the real Avengers. I remember that. What's going on now involves a lot of young people. And it's not just young, melanated people. But at the same time, I mean, there's some young people out there in the streets. It's a lot going on. This whole year has been kind of in a flux, starting with the transition of Kobe Bryant, who's significant to this. He's part of his transition is part of what's going on, but I don't want to load the deck too much. My question to you is, because some will say, well, why are we talking about that when people out here in these streets? I subject to you and for you to decode and unpack for us that somebody knows exactly what you're talking about. They know it very well. And it said that the anarchy is always orchestrated by the controller ruling class. The reaction to anarchy is unpredictable. That comes from the human spirit and collective. So I guess the question behind the question is, how is metaphysics and the study of these quantum sciences, these people, it's taken them a long time to learn just a little bit, just enough to be dangerous, but look at the manifestation of what little they've learned of our ancient teachings. How do these things connect? Because there's a lot going on right now, Dr. Valentine, and we know that it's not random. What's the binding hinge to all of this as you see it? Or is there one?
Well, there is always action reaction, cause effect. You can't escape that. What we're looking at is a venting for a recovery. And when this particular outburst and all of this, what seems to be chaos, because that's what anarchy is to create chaos, so that there's no leadership. There is just pretty much a mob rule, and whoever is the strongest in the mob rules. And what we're looking at essentially is a clearing. It is it's actually a participatory social event where people who are watching mindless carnage in their own neighborhoods and listening to narratives broadcasting what seems to be a Roman circus. And the people who would have in the past condoned this are the ones that's being converted. And what you're watching is an outing of a cancer that has been very slowly eating away at the global humanity. And there were people, a very few people, working to undermine the human spirit, to stop it from moving forward of its own volition, spiritual volition. And what they wanted to do was to control that particular energy and guide it, mold it in such a way that their world order, and this is what we're talking about, these are the globalists that's actually motivating this. The globalists were at they were in stage 3 to bring about World War III. And World War III was planned since 1959. This was the circumventing interactions, and I don't want to go too deeply into the things that delayed it. But from the point of when Kennedy was assassinated, that was the coup that created the avenue for the globalists to move in. Kennedy was there to stop it because he saw what was going on. He got the word from Eisenhower, and Eisenhower passed it on to what's his name, Nixon. And what you had was this movement of the so-called military-industrial complex, which was actually the New World Order, which was actually the globalists who were working underneath or below the radar. What was happening is with the elections that came with George Bush orchestrating the assassination on the ground of Kennedy, and then him putting people, the puppets that were put in place in order to bring the presidency along with his son, and then from there he training Clinton, and Clinton then handing off his CIA knowledge and everything over to Obama. And what we had was this movement, this almost a juggernaut that was moving forward. And what we watched at that time, the diminishing of rights, the diminishing of the education system, the diminishing of the jobs, the destruction of family, the complete robbing and kidnapping of children by the state. We were watching this cauldron of energy. For some of us were watching. Some of us were just going along because we didn't know what was going on. Most of the 88% of the people didn't know what was going on. Very few really knew what was going on until such time as Hillary, who was slated to start World War III, was put up. But there was a counter plan going on parallel to that. And I don't want to get too deeply involved in it because I know what happened to bring Trump into this particular position that he's in. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, well, he's for Trump and so forth. Well, no, I know what's going on. I keep telling people we don't have a dog in the fight, but what you need to do is to know how to bet on the game, where to put your chips, how to do what you're doing so that you can actually reclaim what's yours. And that's what's happening right now. Your aboriginal rights and your autochthonous rights are getting ready to be given back to you, but you're not ready for it yet. And there are those of us who are below the radar actually getting ready for that, and Trump is on board with that. That's all I can say to you. There's this new king of England that just came about, King John III, and from what I understand from those who actually put Elizabeth on the throne after Victoria, I'm in touch with them, and they're saying it's a lot of nonsense, and they're going to be releasing their own information very soon. Now I know I've kind of blossomed out from the question that you said, but all of that is relevant. Yeah, all of that is relevant to what we're looking at today. So what we're watching, and I just want to wrap this particular part of it up. What we're watching is a You ever seen how when in the movies when like in the Joker when Batman went through between the truck, hit the truck and the truck just stopped. It was going a hell for lead, and then all of a sudden began to flip over. Well, that's where we're at that point where the so-called globalists were barreling along, and all of a sudden, boom! And it is there. What we're watching is all of those who were in that deep state energy now are coming to the surface. They can't help themselves. Now, they must come to the surface in order to save and to perpetuate and to continue what they had started some 50 years ago. So we're watching a war. We're watching a war at this particular time for the soul of the planet. Right at this particular time, also, I want everybody to look at this too. About 3 miles off the shore of New York, one of Trump's people who was, I think he was a racist, I don't know who he is, but Trump got rid of him. But he's been working with the Chinese, I think with the Tibetans and with Hong Kong. And 3 miles offshore, which is international waters off New York, we just had an announcement by him. I forgot his name. Everybody knows him as a racist, but I think he's been working with Trump. And again, please don't think that I'm kissing anybody's rear end when I'm telling you this. I'm telling you how the game is being played. You can believe how you want to, but I'm showing you how the game is played. But look out for something called the new federal state of China. This is what's going to cause the Chinese Communist Party to go ape, to go crazy. There's the new federal state of China. I think it's got to do with what is known as the Himalayan Pact. So you're watching now China going into this Republican/democracy, and that's where you're going to start seeing upheavals. That's why they attacked Hong Kong. I'm saying all of this because our young people have to wake up to the fact that they're being manipulated right now by people like Soros and who he works for, which are the Rothschilds, the Gettys, and the Koches, the rest of these people, who essentially are part of the new socialist Nazi New World Order. In fact, it's these Antifa people that you see are actually hired by Soros, who, by the way, I will give you an idea of Soros himself. This is the funny part about it is there you can go up on polls, and it says here, get paid to be a professional anarchist. Get paid up to $200 direct action. You saw that. So what you're watching is actually George Soros creating the conditions of a war criminal. And you remember who people don't know who George Soros is. They're very young. They don't study history, so they don't know who George Soros is. They may call him a hero, by the way, because not knowing who he is, the man has over 300 or 400 corporations that he runs. Part of them are Archer Daniels, Applebee's, Ameristar Casinos. He owns Caterpillar. He owns Buffalo Wings. He owns the Big Five store sporting goods. He owns Bed Bath & Beyond. He owns Best Buy. He owns CNET, Coach, Colgate Palmolive, Comcast, DeVry, Deere, DirecTV, Duke Energy, Eastman Kodak. He owns Goldman Sachs. This is who he owns. And guess what? He was a Hofjuden. He was a Jew who worked for the Nazis and in Hungary during World War II. Not only that, he said that in fact, he used to work for the Nazis as an SS. He was a socialist, German socialist. And when he said something to the effect, I've made it my life's mission to destroy the United States. I hate this country and I hate all of the people that are in it. And he said this in a Newsweek interview in 1979. So the billions he has that he's got going on, and I'm saying this to the young people, I'm not proselytizing any political, taking any sides. I'm letting you know that the chaos that you're dealing with right now is to make sure that you stay confused as to who is at war with who and why and what the end goal is. The end goal is to turn you into communist China because Hillary sold all that the uranium to the Russians back in when Hillary's husband Billary was the president. He orchestrated the crash of a high-tech spy plane in China so that they can get the technology. Obama himself used to work for British intelligence while he was growing up in the Philippines. So all of this was, you don't see the mesh of all the things that's being worked on in order to destroy the United States of America and turn it into a communist country. And if you think that you have a hard time with the racism that we deal with in country now, just try to be like live in places like Venezuela, where they had a socialist system that just went bankrupt. It's about a new hierarchy. Socialism, Nazism, communism is about a new kleptocracy, an autocracy that is one centralized power. It has nothing to do with your rights or anything. They don't care about that. So just for the young people listening to me, you can put me in any category you wish. Metaphysics always tells you what are the motivative patterns that you need to look for so that you can follow along and have an intelligent insight as to what's going on. If you're listening to CNN, you don't know what's going on. If you're listening to MSNBC, you don't know what's going on. ABC, NBC, CBS, you don't know what's going on. You are the news now. You have the cameras and your phones. You can actually tell the truth today of what's really going on behind the scenes. You can go into your own neighborhood and see little white kids paint Black Lives Matter with black masks on to make you believe that it's you and make the world believe that Black Lives Matter or all of it is that what we're arguing about when it comes to the murder of a brother or sister in the community. They've hijacked that particular protest, and now they're using it as a means to get at Trump and the United States government to put Hillary in, or to put Biden in, or to put what's her name, Michelle Obama in. One of them is going to come in at the moment. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off the deep ends, but when you ask a question,
no, you're fine. You're fine. No, we need to know. And what's interesting, it's funny when you were mentioning that, I saw something that the one thing I'm gonna say this to kind of something you mentioned. I saw a post where in Iran of all places, they were taking a stand for George Floyd. I found that interesting that this, we, Dr. Valentine, we both lived long enough. You being one of our wise elders, and I'm right behind you. We've lived long enough to see black men get killed by police before. Black women get killed by police before. This could have happened at any time over the last 20 years, for that matter.
Indeed.
I've had cops done on me. Okay, why now? And that's a rhetorical question. You're decoding this for us, but I find it interesting that this is going viral, and I'm curious to know: is this obviously, quote unquote, the Wizard of Oz wanted things to work a certain way for these agendas that you've been sharing with us, but what they didn't count on is the human spirit. And people have been saying, well, this is a reset. I'm almost at a point where I'm looking at this more than a reset, more or less a rebirth. And you did mention that. So talk to us about that. Of all places, Iran? I mean, doesn't that go? Well, that's almost against everything that conventional the conventional narrative.
Excuse me. Well, you have to look at Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That's the playbook that Obama, Hillary, Biden, what's her name from the House, Pelosi. All of these people are using Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That how to undermine governments, what to do. They're following the playbook. Now, why Iran? Because remember, in order to seed the ground for World War III, they had to make sure that all the weapons and the people were in place to actually ignite it. They did. Obama actually created ISIS along with Hillary. He began funding Al Qaeda over in Syria, in those areas. And he began giving weapons and territorial power to those who would be fighting on the side of the globalists so that there would be an excuse for the American people to go through another 9/11 to bring us into war with China. Now, you got to remember that over the last 8 years to 16 years, they have been upgrading China's technology in war. So the time when Iran was supposed to play a part in that, that's when Obama shipped over $500 billion in bills in a C-130 to Iran. I believe it was something like 50 billion or 500 million or 500 billion. I'm not sure what the figures are, but he stacked dollars, huge dollars, that they took from the Philippines, because that's where they print the monies for the United States of America. They don't print the money here. They don't print the fiat here. They print it in the Philippines. So they took all that money. He took all that money and sent it to Iran to fund them and to give them the nuclear technology to start a low-level nuclear war between Iran, Russia, North Korea, and with the help of the Saudi Arabians. What did Trump do when he was first elected? He knew the game plan. They knew the game plan. Q knows the game plan. The intelligence community that was working to actually keep John Jr. alive and to bring Trump into office, they knew all of the plans. And what did he first do? Before he did anything, Trump hopped on a plane and went directly to Saudi Arabia. That was his first visit. Right after he left, 2 months later, they began arresting over 150 members of the Saudi Arabian government. Then he went where? To North Korea. These were all of the agitation points where they were going to start World War III. And what did he do? He said, we know that you got the deep state here in North America, in North Korea, and that Hillary Clinton and the deep state have been motivating you. The North Koreans ain't got diddly. They couldn't wipe their own behinds with the that tried to make. Being funded in order to be able to be part of the scheme. Then he went over and talked to Putin, and then he went to China and told them, listen, I'm not playing. What did he do? He took $500 billion, nearly $1 trillion, and began to rebuild the military of the United States. Why? Because over the 8 years that Obama was in office, he began dismantling the U.S. military to get them ready for China to land. China was supposed to land over the top of Canada and the east and the west coast. China had bought up the biggest shipping lanes and shipping docks in California. Trump kicked them out. He told Canada, he went up and saw Canada and said, if you're part of this, you're going to war with us too. So after putting nearly $1 trillion back into the military to get ready, that's when China and them started backing down, because America got military weapons and military technology that didn't get into their hands. And he went over there and told them about it. And if you remember, right when Obama was assuming his second term, he told the Russian ambassador, listen, give me a little time. Once I get in office, then it'll make it a little easier on us, or something to that effect.
Interesting.
And then after he went to see Putin grabbed him by his tie and said, look, boy, don't play with me. You said you promised us this, you promised us blah, 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 and so forth. So what you're watching, family, and this has got nothing to do with metaphysics, it's metaphysical thinking. Stop looking at the obvious. Stop letting them manipulate your emotions. And you know, when it comes to racism, That's the spark. They know just where to trigger it.
Like the free space in bingo.
There you go. So they know how to play us. So what do? Remember I told you many times, when we're not paying attention to them anymore, what do? They kill one of our brothers or sisters. Oh, they got our attention now. So what do? They went ahead and sacrificed this man. And that's again, I'm still waiting for the forensics on that situation to see if it's really real. Because everything right now that has sparked any kind of chaos in our society has is what I would categorize first as a psyop. So here's a man that's being murdered on camera from different angles, and the camera angles that they filmed the murder have different times, and it's all orchestrated so that to make it look as heinous as possible. And somebody was right there with the camera, and when you look at them from another angle, there's nobody there. And then when the man when they call for the EMT to come down, the EMT comes out with flak jackets.
They weren't even EMTs. They were actually policemen. Now that's like they can't. That's like a movie. That's like a movie, like Inside Job, like just like the movie.
Yes.
Where somebody messes up or misdirect. Also, let me say this before you. I have a background in photography. I've been a photographer for over 40 years, and I told someone brought it to my attention. They said, first of all, and this is somebody that she doesn't have a horse in the race. She is totally removed from all of this, but she knows what she knows. She said, Tony, those cops, you always see cops pull up and roll up on somebody when it's filmed. These cops came out of nowhere. The main two, and even from another angle, there's no cop. They didn't. You never see them get out of a squad car. Were they just hanging out, waiting for this dude to do what he did? But here's the thing about the photography. Consistently, you brought it to our attention. Our late Baba Dick Gregory, late Dr. Blair, those that are from our time, all of them say the same thing. Why is it that the cameraman is always there? And the reason why I brought up my background, the focal length is always the same. You're getting the same shot. It's like the same people that film Rodney King, film this, the same Sandra Bland. You're getting the same angle. Yet and still, when it looked like Nipsey Hussle, that hit on him, it was fuzzy. With all these high-tech 4K cameras all around, that neighborhood that he was killed in, I grew up in that neighborhood. I literally frequent flyer miles there. It's about 10 minutes away from where I grew up. I used to see him in the neighborhood when he was a young man before I moved out of Cali. But it's interesting that for this, you get a sharp, clear image. It's like it's staged, and it's the same focal point. And then, yet and still, as the thing goes on, so I'm going to ask you that. I just wanted to make that statement to back up what you said. And then I want to say this before we go to the break. We talk about the past President Obama coming out of office. So this is what I find interesting. Shout out to you and those of my time, era of my time. You guys always told us, don't get in your feelings. Don't be emotional about everything. Then you can be analytical and critical. How could a president, this is just fact, how could a president sign an executive order giving a green light to light your black ass up, all of a sudden show up at this particular time, just when it looks like we're turning the corner, and say, well, everybody, here come the $25 words. I don't have a horse in the race. I didn't vote for nobody. Here come the $25 words and telling you that everything that he's seen that he could have done something about, if in fact he wanted to, all of a sudden here he comes, and he's the one that gave the green light. We know code. You taught us to decode things. When he said, if I had a son, he'd be Trayvon Martin. He was telling that was code speak for go at it, have at it, and they had a field day. So would you speak on that, and then we're going to go to break, and we've got some. First of all, let me say this before you give your answer. This is New Origins podcast. And if you want to talk to Dr. Valentine, thank you for those of you as we speak. I'm seeing activity on Facebook. Everybody's sharing this, and we always want to know what you have to say. You can call in 563-999-3507. Hit 1. We'll bring you in the queue, and we'll have a question for him. But speak on that. How can you give the green? How can you sign an executive order giving the cops the green light to do whatever they want to us, and then come out there speaking against them almost, tiptoeing around and telling the same people you were chastising that it's going to be all right, you got the right. I don't get it. I'm not the brightest crayon in the box.
Well, you have to understand how doublespeak and doublespeak works. George Orwell put it down very succinctly. You have to, how words work. And this is why my classes in metaphysics teaches you to listen for subtext. It's not always what's being said. It's the reverse speech in what's being said. And when you understand how metaphysics work, you understand that for every positive, which is what you see in the writing of when you see a sentence being written or a sentence being spoken, that's the positive. But there is a subtext to it, because every positive has a negative and every negative has a positive. So when you understand negative and positive speech, when you understand how words are used to actually engender energy, energy is what you are using when you are thinking. When you are actually focused, or your attention is focused on a specific energy being conveyed on a current of words, then you are actually speaking to a part of you that's either been trained because you know and understand the language, or a part of you that has been trained that certain words invoke specific emotional reactions. And they know how to pace the words, they know how to say them, how to use the inflections of words. And that's what we teach at our University of Commission Sciences, how you can actually decode how people speak, how your thoughts speak back to you. Are you thinking your thoughts, or are your thoughts thinking you? Because you no longer are in control of your thoughts. Your thoughts are actually dictating to you from the subconscious and the conscious levels. So yes, there are many things right now that are happening in our society, and the confusion is because you have always been taught to react, always react. And my beloved brother, who was one of my mentors and teachers, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, he says, he says, well, what's all this metaphysics going to be about? How are they going to bring our people? I said, first of all, big brother, you got to understand that you want people to intelligently support you. If you want those ones that are going to blindly follow you by their reactions, then who's going to follow up after that reaction dies down? You may achieve what you want, but what are you going to do with the achievement? So when I speak of metaphysics, people think it's about sticking needles and pins into dolls. No, it is about a clear inventory of thought. It's you going into self and looking at the inventory of accumulated thinking processes that have made you the man or woman today, and how you want to change, if you wish to change that. If you want to shift gears, then I show you how thought works so that you can do that for yourself. And right now, you are being manipulated. Your emotions are being manipulated, and CNN and the rest of these know through Project Mockingbird, which is the CIA, who are the actual writers of the scripts for the talking head meat puppets that you see on CNN. These are people who know how to couch and to carve and to crave a specific word, or to make a word, to formulate words in order to get your emotions started rather than your thinking, your critical thinking.